What is happening, everybody? My name is John and I am a relative newbie. In fact, I'm a complete newbie to anime, but I have recently watched the entire first season of the One Piece live action on Netflix, but I have never seen the anime. Now, before I get into my thoughts on the show, let me quickly run you through what I did know about the anime. I knew it was about pirates, I knew it had a name that I didn't understand, and I knew it was about a boy with crazy eyes in a straw hat. That's all I knew, but I'm super happy to say I've thoroughly enjoyed my time with One Piece. Now, the reason I didn't react to it, this is mainly an anime reaction channel these days, but the reason I didn't react to it is I actually started watching this while on a family break in my family home with my eldest son and my wife. My son is 12, he's a big anime fan, and he is into the cartoon itself. Cartoon, I guess you still call it that. And me and my wife decided to give it a go, to try the first episode with him. And do you know what? Pretty much straight away we were in, certainly by the end of the first episode. But let's get stuck into the show itself. What I've really enjoyed about it is, despite it being a live action version of an anime, it feels like a show that's meant for families, but not in the same way that so many things say that they're family. A lot of things that say they're for families are actually just for kids, or they're for kids with the odd little nod to an adult, like a lot of animated films these days. But the stuff that I consider for family was the stuff that I used to watch when I was younger, when I was a teenager. Things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you know, which are action-packed and snappy and well-written and funny, but still, when necessary, dealt with some adult themes, dealt with some mature scenarios. And that is kind of what One Piece is, despite the fact it's about a boy, or a young man, I should say, who can stretch his arms like Dhalsim from Street Fighter or turn into a giant rubber ball. And there are fishmen and all sorts of other stuff like that. It straddles that boundary. It crosses that wave between those two seas beautifully well. So I think it's worth going into the structure of the show. I'm fascinated by how the anime is structured, and with 1,000 episodes, I know there's over 1,000 episodes, this thing was so daunting that I figured I'm never even going to start it. Why start something with 1,000 episodes? That's 20,000 hours of content. It's just not going to happen. But like 8 hours of a Netflix season, very different. But let's talk about the structure. Obviously, One Piece is about a crew of pirates, basically on a grand quest for this artifact, for this treasure, the One Piece, which is in somewhere called the Grand Line, which is discussed many times in this first season, but we never get to it. I have no idea where they are after 1,000 episodes in the anime. But it's structured where almost every single episode is kind of like the backstory of each of the crew members, shown through pretty excellent, actually, child actors. And I think what that does is it grounds these kind of otherwise slightly ridiculous characters. If you're not used to anime, or indeed you're not used to, like, I mean, I'm not that used to anime, but obviously I've got a big background in Japanese video games, in all video games, in fact. So these types of unusual characters, they don't feel massively odd to me, but I can see how they would for a Western audience. But by grounding it, by giving it them all these origin stories, episode by episode, whether it's Luffy, whether it's Zoro, whether it's Nami, it gives the show and the cast a real grounding that you can get emotionally attached to, even when the show veers off into the silly, which it definitely does. But also, all of these backstories are genuinely well written. And despite the fact that it is a show about devil fruits and stretchy arms and clown pirates that can be sliced into multiple parts, when you put it out like that, it is pretty daft. It has tremendous heart. I don't quite know how they've managed to straddle that line so well, but I can only imagine the anime, in its incredible popularity, is the basis of this, and the reason it has over 1,000 episodes is because people get so emotionally invested in it. That's the only thing that I can think of. So in a minute I want to talk about the performances and some of the cast, but we have to talk about how this thing is directed and shot. It's really interesting. It's quite gaudy. It uses a lot of close-up, which I think, it doesn't look like anime, but it gives it a stylistic uniqueness that doesn't really seem like anything else. There's a lot of close-up shots, like I say, and they use a bokeh effect, so everything else in the background is very blurred out. They use a lot of unusual angles as well, sort of being shot from below for a lot of these close-ups, and it gives the show a unique and at first slightly off-putting look. I wasn't sure about it at first. They may be using some filters as well, or some CG after the effect, because everybody does look somewhat plasticky. Do you know what I mean? But it's consistent throughout the whole show, and the use of color, the excellent CG that is in there throughout, some amazing effects that work really well. And it must have been an expensive show to make. Create a really vibrant and exciting world. The blue of the sea, which is obviously central to the whole show, is really enticing. And there's a great job, which anime does really well a lot of the time, I think, in the sort of separate color schemes of each character, so that you get that kind of immediacy in attaching yourself to the crew. I think in a world where a lot of films and TV have moved into the slightly more verite style of filming with handheld cameras and sort of more naturalistic dialogue, which I do appreciate a lot of the time. Think Succession or something like that. I don't know why I'm comparing One Piece to Succession, but that's probably the last two TV shows that I've really enjoyed. This unique style, I'm not saying it's the sort of most amazingly shot or directed show you've ever seen, but it moves away from that verite style, but it also definitely doesn't look like the TV shows of the 90s, like a Buffy. And it doesn't look too much like sort of modern action cinema, Marvel cinema either. It stands on its own, and I think that's really impressive, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this style mirrored and mimicked in other shows going forward, especially if One Piece is the success that it seems like it probably is. But I think the real magic of this show actually comes from the performances. So Iñaki Godoy as a Monkey D. Luffy is just a ball, an effervescent ball of charisma, who captures this kind of underdog mixed with pure charm, mixed with just, he's the kind of character that quite quickly you just want to root for, and his arc throughout the whole series is massively captivating. At first I thought he was just too much, slightly irritating. He definitely has that slightly irritating quality, but it's the kind of irritating that eventually you kind of fall for. I think that his performance, his sort of physical performance, he's not really able to stretch his body, I don't think. Just full of energy in every single scene, and does a great job with his face of just making you root for him and making you believe in him. What a fantastic character it is. It had to have been to hang 1,000 episodes of a central character like that. He's matched with excellent performances from Emily Rudd as Nami, from Makanyu as Zoro, and the rest of the cast, the rest of the pirate crew, the Straw Hat crew. Similarly excellent. Must give a shout out to one of the enemies though, who really carries, certainly the second half of the season. Arlong, who's played by McKinley, I've got to get his name right, McKinley Belcher the third, who just absolutely chews up the scenery, seems to be loving this character. I mean, the makeup job that they've done in creating this fish man with the, or shark man, I guess, with this kind of like serrated nose. I mean, it doesn't really look anything like the actual actor, but his performance still carries through. And in a cast full of charismatic characters and charismatic actors, he's right up there for me. One thing that I was worried about going into this show though would be the stakes. I think that's a serious problem with like superhero films, for example. You never really believe that the good guy is going to be in any sort of trouble. And with a show with 1,000 episodes, anytime that some of the main characters were in trouble, I'm thinking, well, they're not going to die because we're at like episode 10 of 1,000. Then, you know, I know they're not going to die. But with the way that the backstories are constructed and with some of the twists that the show delivers throughout, there are actually stakes, and you do get emotionally invested, and it's not so much about whether or not characters are going to die. It's more about whether or not they're going to be able to fulfill their destiny and their dream, which is the central theme of One Piece. The combination of the writing, the acting, direction, and the storytelling actually executes on stakes really well, and I was very impressed by this. And you do get emotionally involved in a way that is actually quite rare for all the superhero cinema these days. But I think what One Piece really does well, and I've never seen any of the other live action animes, Cowboy Bebop, Death Note, I've not seen any of these, but one thing anime, in my limited experience with it, does so well is world building. One Piece is ultimately a kind of ridiculous story, like I say, about these fruits that can give you these crazy powers, about a world of pirates, about warlords. I mean, like, if you break it down, a lot of it doesn't make sense, but it's thematically consistent throughout. Great anime seems to establish a bunch of rules early on and then stick to it, almost in a video game or board game way. These are the rules of the world. This is how everything works. These are the players. These are the characters. This is the structure of it. And now we're going to let stories play out within the confines of those rules. Almost like Dungeons and Dragons in a way. Not that One Piece has anything to do with Dungeons and Dragons, but I hope you follow what I'm saying. And One Piece, in establishing this world of fruits, of pirates, of the seas, of a world where people don't have maps, but there are neon signs. I mean, think about it for a second, it doesn't make a great deal of sense. But that is why I got so invested, because I'm just fully into this world that's established. And I love the fact it's a show that I can genuinely watch with my kids, with my wife, everybody's involved. It's not a kid's show, there's swearing and violence, but it never pushes itself over into being an adult show. It wouldn't work as an adult show, it's far too daft. But it also shows that it's actually one of the things that I've liked about anime so far. I used to love cartoons and all that sort of stuff as a kid, and then it was never made for anybody over the age of about 10. And that's what anime seems to be. It's made for kids and teenagers over the age of 10. And to be honest, even as a man in my very early 40s, you don't lose a lot of that. I still like all that shit. I still like crazy fights, which are there in abundance in this show and brilliantly shot, directed, and full of excellent fight choreography. I still love crazy characters. I still love powers, but I like stakes, drama, emotional resonance, and world building. One Piece has it all. I really hope it's done well and that there is a second series. I'm sure that there will be, given how massive the property is. But what I'm really interested to know down in the comments as well, anime fans, One Piece anime fans, how has this hit for you? I have never seen the show and I think it's excellent, but if I'm a massive fan of the show, this might absolutely suck. This might have ruined all of the characters. I don't know. Super keen for your thoughts. Let me know as well if you would like more reviews like this on the channel. We'll continue to react, of course, but I do like to just get my straw hat on, get my thinking hat on, and get talking sometimes as well. Okay, if you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. If you want to get ahead of the game on the reactions, link down in the description to the Patreon, and I will see you on the next video, all right? Ah! That was a terrible Luffy impression.